Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mario Odyssey. I don't know if you guys are excited about Mario Odyssey, but I'm pretty excited about Mario Odyssey. I didn't
Super
think about
psyched.
it a lot because I didn't own a Switch until last week. Because I was like, oh, I don't even know if I'm going to have a Switch or if I'm going to buy it. But part of the deciding factor was actually at the Nintendo World Championships. They let us all play like 10 minutes of Mario Odyssey
Oh my
during
goodness.
our rehearsals because, of course, we didn't know it at the time, but that was the final game in the finals.
And was
And
the level that they played, was that one of the demo levels that you all got to try?
No, I'm guessing the demo levels were the same as the demo levels in Best Buy, as far as I know, just because I've seen some videos on YouTube of people playing the demo in Best Buy. And it was like the level I chose was the same one. We got to pick between a sand level or like a city level.
Yeah.
And I picked the sand level. And yeah, but it was kind of cool to just get hands-on, you know, and just see how the movement was, because I think especially in the speedrunning community, people are really like chomping at the bit to get their hands on that game and start speedrunning it. And one of the main concerns was, how is the movement going to be? Is it going to be good? Is it going to feel good? And I think it felt really great. And even in that one level, they have some very interesting ideas that I think it's going to be a fantastic speedrun. Let's put it that way.
I was actually listening to another podcast earlier. I was at the grocery store shopping, and they were mentioning that some of the people who were very familiar with Super Mario 64 were kind of angry because they expected the playstyle and movement of Mario Odyssey, because you can still do the triple jump and a lot of the moves that were introduced with Super Mario 64. They were upset that Mario in Odyssey was slower than Mario in Super Mario 64. But then there were other people arguing that you can do the like super fast sprint run in Mario Odyssey, so in a way you're faster than you were. And they were talking about how whenever people move from one game to a sequel like this, which is not necessarily a sequel because it's coming 20 years later, but
right,
that they're so used to Super Mario 64 and they want to get into speedrunning Super Mario Odyssey, and because the movements are so close to each other but it's off by a little bit, then if they get used to playing Odyssey, when they go back to try their speed runs at 64, it'll throw them off the tiniest bit to where Mario's not jumping quite as far, where he's not running quite as fast. Do you have any thoughts on that, or was it an issue that you even noticed? I don't know if you speedrun Mario 64, but it seemed like the people who were on the podcast that do speedrun the game were upset about it. But for me personally, it's such a small issue that it's like, well, if he's just a tiny bit slower, I can see why that would throw you off, but it's not something I would personally be upset with.
The thing is, the game is like, it's been 20 years and it's on a different console and a different engine, so you cannot expect it to be completely one-to-one with this game from the 90s. Like, that's an unrealistic expectation. That's absurd.
That's why I wanted to bring it up here, because in my head, where I don't speedrun anything, when I was a kid, I would try to beat levels and stuff as fast as I could, after I had already beat it, of course, but thinking on it now, it's like, it's not something that would bother me at all, but that's why I wanted to get the opinion of someone who was familiar with speedrunning. So,
well, I think
what are your
like,
thoughts?
right, I think like any time that you switch between games, at least for me, there's going to be a certain amount of kind of de-rusting that has to go on. Like if I even take a week off of any game, then when I come back, it just feels a little weird, a little strange, a little off, and a lot of that is just your muscle memory kind of having to reset and come back. I don't know, because I did run Super Mario Sunshine. I've never run Mario 64, but I do know, like, if you have two games that are similar, I could see how maybe that would throw you off a little bit, but I don't think it would be that much different from just the normal de-rusting process. And I think if you were to run both of the games at the same time, you wouldn't have any trouble at all, because you wouldn't have time to get used to one and like forget what the other one felt like. So if people are concerned, I'd just say, you know, keep playing Mario 64 at the same time. Just like don't take like, because I think everyone's so excited about Mario Odyssey, everyone's just gonna like jump on it, play it. I've heard of one blind race that's already being organized for Saturday.
Oh my goodness!
Like, people are super excited about this game, but it's like, well, don't just abandon your speed game because you're gonna get rusty. And sure, you could blame it on Super Mario Odyssey, but I'd just say it would happen no matter what.
Yeah. What are you most excited for with Super Mario Odyssey? A lot of people obviously like the last 3D Mario game. There's an argument that 3D World on the Wii U could have been a 3D game, but I look at it as more of like a 2.5D game.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the last episode, I believe. But with Galaxy, 64, Sunshine, and now Odyssey, do you like what are your expectations for it really? Like whenever it was first shown off, was it something that you were instantly excited for, or did it take you playing it at the Nintendo World Championships before you really got excited?
I think it did take me playing it, and I think I was a little bit worried about the controls and how it would feel, because that's such a big part of a game for me, is just like if it feels awkward or off, then it just is really hard for me to get into it as quickly. But I mean, the main thing I'm looking forward to is definitely the exploration aspect. Like, if you were to ask me like one thing that I really love about a game, it's like, give me a big wide open area with stuff in it and just let me go and look at everything. And then if you like hide something I can collect behind every staircase and corner, then, you know, that's even better. So like, for example, when Breath of the Wild came out, like that game has become one of my favorite games of all time, and that's really hard for me to say about a Zelda game, especially since I've been playing Zelda since the Super Nintendo, you know, Link to the Past. And so it's like to have a Zelda game come on from this new era that really was like challenging my love of the Zeldas that came out when I was growing up. It's really hard to say, but it did, because it was just that perfect game for me where you can just explore over every mountain, and then when you go there's actually something to find that's interesting. It's like Skyrim, except Skyrim didn't always do the best job of when you found a cave, there wasn't always anything there actually to find. Yeah. Although I love
that's
Skyrim
the thing about
too.
Breath of the Wild, is that it's so well put together, and the world is so rich that it like completely overthrows all of the nostalgic love for previous games. Like, it's exactly the same. It's like totally my favorite Zelda game, and it's like all these other games, I still love them, but it's hard. True. Yeah, but that's the thing, is all these games that you feel all this nostalgic love, like, oh, this will always be my favorite Zelda game. Breath of the Wild just overthrows it completely.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's good. If it can challenge nostalgia, if anything can challenge nostalgia, that's how you know it's like grade A solid game.
Are we allowed...
I'm hoping that Mario Odyssey has that level of exploration in it. It looks like from the levels we've gotten to see and play that they are kind of that wide open level design that we saw in Sunshine, that we saw in Mario 64, and to some extent in the Galaxy games. Because I completely agree with you about the 3D World and 3D Land games. I've played both of those, and while they were good games, it just didn't have that same feeling of like there's this wide open space for you to explore. Like, it was much more linear. And it's funny because I've talked to people who love that. Like, that's their favorite thing about games. They like having a path. They like knowing where to go. Like, that the wide open thing just doesn't do it for them. They're not in it for the exploration, which is great. I mean, it's great that there's video games that are out there for everybody. But just for me personally, I'm hoping that's what Mario Odyssey will bring to the table.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Daniel? Did I interrupt you there?
100% just what she just said. Like, just hit the nail on the head there about how I feel.
Right.
I liked 3D World as well, but like there's like almost like two styles of Mario in my opinion, and one is the open world, and one's like the goalpost style, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So one of the things with Odyssey that I'm most excited for is the way Nintendo has been describing it is where when they compare it to Breath of the Wild, they say like Breath of the Wild is just this huge open world that you can go anywhere, do whatever you want. And Super Mario Odyssey isn't open world, but they referred to it what they called like an open sandbox, to where you still have these different miniature worlds that you can go to, but each of those worlds are a lot larger and a lot more compact with a bunch of stuff to do. So it's not like Super Mario 64 to where you jump in a painting, go to one area, and then it's just one level. And then you get through it, you can get the 5 stars or whatever. In this game, here's this huge world that you can run around in and explore that aren't necessarily huge, but they're a lot bigger than what you would expect from a Mario game, and they're not just big, they actually have stuff to do. I don't know if we're allowed to do minor spoilers. Are you avoiding spoilers at all from Mario? About
as long as it's minor, I'm
like
cool.
do you know about the power moons that they have?
Yep.
The number of power moons. Yeah, so that's what you were talking about, and it reminded me of it whenever you said that you love going somewhere and finding something. And it reminded me of, especially when you started talking about Breath of the Wild right after, there's the 900 Koroks in Breath of the Wild, and I think there's like 600 of the power moons.
I think 600, yeah.
In Mario Odyssey, and it makes me think, is there going to be like 50 power moons in each world? Because in Super Mario 64, there's only those 5 stars. One of the stars is always beat the boss, and then the other 4 stars are one's the red coins, and then there's several different like hidden areas or puzzles that you have to solve for the other 3. But in this, it's like there's going to be like 50, 60, 70 in each of the different worlds, depending on how many worlds there are. And it just makes me think, like, are they just going to be like, you pick up a rock or you beat a certain enemy and it's there, or are they
There's
going to...
There's a moon under here. How do you know?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that with so many different collectibles? Because games like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Super Mario 64, a big reason to keep playing those games after you beat the main boss at the end is to, like, they use the term collectathon, because you are going around collecting all of these different things. With this game, is that something you were interested in as well, or does it kind of push you back to where it's like, well, I don't know if I would have the time to go through and get all of those?
Yeah, I think that brings up a great point, because I think there's a part of me that is a little bit of a completionist, and but I've learned to temper that as I've played, because I just would never finish anything, and that's really what it came down to. Is I learned that if I didn't kind of suppress that urge just a little bit, like, I just never get any game done. Like, a great example is Hat in Time. I just finished that game. Amazing game. If you like 3D platformers, you should definitely pick it up. And that game, like, I probably did 60% of it and then just headed to the final boss, just because I knew that if I waited until I, like, sussed out every secret, like, I probably wouldn't ever actually get to beating that final boss. And so it's a behavior of mine that I've actually had to change a little bit in order to complete games. And as far as the moon thing, like, I don't know how they're going to do that, because usually in collectathons they kind of put different categories of things that you collect, you know. So like in Banjo-Kazooie, there'd be the Jinjos and you get 5 of those, and then the notes and you get 100 of those, and then there's the puzzle pieces, which is there's only a few of those. And it's like, if they're all moons, are they going to be like different colors for like the ease? Like, so the one you find under a rock is yellow, but then like the one that you have to work really hard for is green, or I don't know. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they break that up, because I think that would kind of ruin the experience if, like, for one you didn't have to do very much, and then for one you had to work really hard, and it was just like, I don't know, like, it just seems like for game balance reasons that would be a really bad idea. So it'll be interesting to see how they, like, balance out these different moons that you can find, because I can't imagine that every one of the 600 moons you have some elaborate quest or boss. Like, that just seems like way more content than they would have time to do.
Yeah, because
I still feel like they'll be a little more deliberately placed than things like the Korok seeds, but I think we've already seen that there's like those purple coins and things, so there probably won't be, it probably won't just be moons for everything, you know. I think they will still have multiple sort of collectibles, or at least I'm hoping, but
because it reminds me of with all of the different Koroks in Breath of the Wild, there were maybe 5 or 6 different ways that you could find the Koroks. It was pick up a rock. Wow, there's a Korok underneath it. Finish completing...
Jump in the circle in the water.
Yeah, finish completing the pattern, or finish the puzzle on the wall, shoot the arrows, or the targets with the arrows. So there was different ways of doing that. I hope since there's not quite as many in Super Mario Odyssey, there's still a lot. I hope it's a bit more unique and it's not just, oh, let's jump on this Goomba and here's Power Moon. But really quickly, the final thing that I want to talk about with Mario Odyssey before we move on to the news is in most of Nintendo's recent games, especially with Fire Emblem, they had it with Mario Kart 8, they've been focusing on DLC. They had it with Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 8, the Fire Emblem games on 3DS, Hyrule Warriors had it, Breath of the Wild had it, which infuriated a lot of people. But with Mario Odyssey, are you in favor of DLC? Because I think it's almost inevitable right now that it'll get, like, maybe not as soon as it comes out, but maybe next year at E3 they'll be like, hey, we loved Mario Odyssey so much, we wanted to keep working on it, here's what we've made. So I think something like that's going to happen. Do you have any thoughts on DLC for Odyssey?
I think you're right. I think there's a good possibility that that will be a thing. For me, I actually rarely buy the DLC. I didn't buy the DLC for Breath of the Wild because by the time it came out, I was done. Like, I had beaten it, I was done. I didn't see myself going back to it, except for my second playthrough in 2 years, which will inevitably happen. But, you know, for right now, like, I just didn't feel like I needed to go back to Breath of the Wild to do the DLC. And I think that's what the DLC is for, to pull you back into it. But for me, for whatever reason, I'm on to the next thing. I'm on to the next game or whatever I'm doing next. And so I think it's great and fine, but it just usually doesn't work on me. Like, I don't usually buy it. Although I did buy the Mario Kart 8 DLC because I wanted the Zelda track. That hooked me.
Yes.
But yeah, but most of the time I don't end up buying the DLC anyway. But I think, sure, if people want more content, then hooray. Like, I'm not one of those people that think, well, gee, any DLC should have just automatically been included in the main game. Like, I'd only feel like that if I felt like the main game was somehow incomplete in the first place, which Breath of the Wild definitely was not. There was tons of content and plenty of things to do to make anyone happy. So yeah, so I think that'd be wonderful. On a speedrunning perspective, it kind of messes everything up. Like, the conversations that happen around speedrunning on newer Nintendo systems usually revolve around DLC and Amiibo, and man, people get heated about those two subjects because it's all about things that you pay for after the fact, and if you can do things faster with something that you paid for, then does it become pay to win at that point? And so those are kind of the conversations that happen around these things. But since I don't actually speedrun any game newer than Super Mario Sunshine, I haven't been involved in any of those conversations, but I still see them happening around me in the different communities.
All right. So if you still have some free time, because you said 5 or 5:30, would you be able to go until 5:30?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right.
Well, and it's 4 o'clock for me, so.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay.
I forgot you were an hour behind. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hopefully we can get through all of this. But again, if you need to go at any time, just mention it, and then Daniel and I can finish it up. So,
okay.
All right. Are you aware of the new Star Wars single-player game being shut down, and Visceral Games, the studio that was working on it for EA, being shut down as well?
No, tell me about it.
Okay. All right. So our first news story comes from... The videos on this channel are funded by supporters on Patreon like you. If you're a fan of this channel and would like to join on videos, receive shoutouts, watch videos early, have your questions answered, or have your topic discussed on our podcast, please consider supporting on Patreon for these and many other rewards for just $1. Shoutouts for this video includes Link Use the Triforce, Rusty Caulfield, Lovable Christie, Give Time 15, Shadow to Us, Robbie Morgan, and Lunarium. I want to thank all of you for everything you have done to help support this channel.